Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. Being a half-blood is dangerous and scary. Most of the time you die in painful, nasty ways because of it. My name is Percy Jackson. Until a few months ago, I was a student at Yancey Academy, a privated school for troubled kids. It's in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. Things started going badly last May, when our 6th grade class took a field trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. Our Latin teacher, Mr. Brunner, was leading the trip. I hoped the trip wouldn't be that bad. At least, I hoped I wouldn't get expelled. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my 5th grade school, when we went to the Saratoga battlefield, I had this accident with a Revolutionary War cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled anyway. And a similar thing happened at my 4th grade school, where I hit the wrong lever and my class took an unplanned swim at the behind-the-scenes tour of the Marine World shark pool. And the time before that, you get the idea. This trip I was determined to be good. During the ride into the city, I put up with Nancy Boba Fett, the freckly red-headed kleptomaniac girl, eating my best friend with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny, he was the only 6th grader with acne and the start of a wispy beard on his chin. And on top of all that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had a muscular disease in his leg. He walked like every step hurt him, but you shouldn't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck in his curly brown hair, and she knew I couldn't do anything since I was already on probation. The headmaster had threatened me with death by inter-school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip.
I'm gonna kill her.
It's okay. I like peanut butter.
That's it.
Looking back on it, I wish I'd decked Nancy Boba Fett right then and there. In-school suspension was nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He rode up front in his wheelchair, guiding us through echoey galleries, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff has survived for 2,000 or 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 4-meter tall stone column with a big sphinx at the top, and told us how it was a grave marker, a steal for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the side. I tried to listen to what he had to say, because it was kinda interesting, but everybody around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher chaperone, Miss Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Miss Dodds was a small maths teacher from Georgia who always wore a leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old, and looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year, when our last teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Miss Dodds loved Nancy Boba Fett and figured I was devil spawn. She would point her crooked fingers at me and say, "Now, honey," real sweet, and I knew I was going to get an after-school detention for a month. One time, after she'd made me erase answers out of my old maths workbooks until midnight, I told Grover I didn't think Miss Dodds was human. She looked at me really seriously and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Brunner kept talking about Greek funeral arts, and Nancy Boba Fett snickered something about the naked guy on the steel, and I turned around.
Will you shut up?
It came out louder than I meant it to. The whole group laughed, and Mr. Brunner stopped his story.
Mr. Jackson, did you have a comment?
No, sir.
Perhaps you'll tell us what this picture represents.
That's Kronos seeing his kids, right?
Yes. And he did this because?
Well, Kronos was the king god and
God.
Titan. And he didn't trust his kids, who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into bathing up his brothers and sisters.
Ew.
And so there was this big fight between the gods and the Titans, and the gods won.
Like we're going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say on job applications, "Oh, please explain why Kronos ate his kids."
And why, Mr. Jackson, to paraphrase Miss Boba Fett's excellent question, does this matter in real life?
Busted.
Shut up.
At least Nancy got into trouble too. Mr. Brunner was the only one who ever caught her saying anything wrong, and he had radar ears.
I don't know, sir.
I see. Well, half credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Cronus a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who, of course, being immortal gods, have been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underground. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside?
The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs and the guys pushing each other and messing around. Grover and I were about to follow.
Mr. Jackson,
Sir?
you must learn the answer to my question
About the Titans.
about real life and how your studies apply to it.
Oh.
What you learn from me is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will accept only the best from you, Percy Jackson.
I wanted to get angry. This guy pushed me so hard. Mr. Brunner expected me to be as good as everybody else, despite the fact I have dyslexia and attention deficit disorder, and I'd never made above a C- in my life. No, he didn't expect me to be as good. He expected me to be better, and I just couldn't learn all those names and facts, much less spell them correctly.
I'll try harder.
Go outside and eat your lunch, Percy.
The class gathered on the front steps of the museum. Overhead, a huge storm was brewing, with clouds blacker than I'd ever seen over the city. I figured it was global warming or something, because the weather all across New York State had been weird since Christmas. We'd had massive snowstorms, floodings, wildfires from lightning. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a hurricane blowing in. Nobody else seemed to notice. Some of the guys were pelting pigeons with Lunchable crackers. Nancy Bobofit was trying to pickpocket something from a lady's bag, and, of course, Mrs. Dodds wasn't seeing a thing. Grover and I sat on the edge of the fountain, away from the others. We thought that if we did that, everybody wouldn't know we were from the school for loser freaks who didn't make it elsewhere.
Detention?
Nah, nothing, Brunner. I wish you'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius.
Can I have your apple?
I didn't have much of an appetite, so I let him take it. I watched cabs going down Fifth Avenue, and thought about my mum's apartment, only a bit uptown from where we sat. I hadn't seen her since Christmas. I wanted to jump in a taxi and head home. She'd hug me and be glad to see me, but she'd be disappointed too. She'd send me back to Yancey and remind me to try harder, even though this was my 6th school in 6 years and I was probably going to be kicked out again, and I wouldn't be able to stand the sad look she'd give me. I was about to unwrap my sandwiches when Nancy Bobofit appeared in front of me with her ugly friends and dumped her half-eaten lunch in Grover's lap.
Oops.
I tried to stay cool. The school counsellor had told me 1,000,000 times. Count to 10. Get control of your tempers. But I was so mad my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ears. I don't remember touching her, but the next thing I know, Nancy was sitting on her butt in the fountain, screaming.
Percy pushed me! Did you see the water?
Like it grabbed her.
I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew was that I was in trouble again.